we were better organized because Ben-Gurion, with a very far-sighted look, he knew that we are going to come to a conflict. And the Haganah, that was the underground forces of Israel, were organizing in such a way that they would become an army eventually.
The main Palestinian leader, Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, lived in exile in Egypt. During the Second World War, he was in Berlin supporting the Nazis. The Mufti controlled the biggest Palestinian militia. Other Arab leaders saw him as a rival, not as an ally. He appointed his cousin, Abdul Qadir al-Husseini, to lead his militia, which was called the Holy War Army.
In the minds of people, he was a hero, and he deserved to be a hero. He was a top-level fighter, courageous, brave, and sincere, loyal.
Husseini led a few thousand guerrilla fighters. With the help of men from local Arab villages, they cut the main Jewish supply route from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the city they all wanted.
This was the biggest prize of all, Jerusalem, a city holy to Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and which had a central part in the dreams of both sides in the war. When the fighting started, neither could imagine a future that didn't include being in charge of this place.
In the partition plan, Jerusalem was supposed to be under international control. Neither Arabs nor Jews wanted that. So, once again, in its bloody history, the Holy City was at war.
Jerusalem was under siege, and the Jewish community in Jerusalem was completely cut off. And there was not enough water, not enough food, and not enough ammunition, not enough soldiers in Jerusalem. And we used to have convoys going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, carrying wheat and water and food and ammunition and so forth.
From February 1948, the attacks on the convoys from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem intensified. Arabs controlled the hills overlooking the route. The Haganah constructed improvised armored cars, known as sandwiches, to protect themselves.
We fought our way to Jerusalem, fighting vehicle after vehicle, and convoys were almost suicidal operation. The situation was such that we didn't want to fall a knife in the hands of. So when you drove an armored car with people inside, whatever, we used to have high explosives inside the truck. That if worse to come to worse, and you say that there is no hope, we preferred to die than to fall alive in their hands. This was a war without prisoners of war.
In March 1948, the Jews went on the offensive. Ben-Gurion and his generals adopted Plan D. Its objectives are still the subject of great controversy.
Some historians say that Plan D was a blueprint for the ethnic cleansing of Arabs from Palestine. Others say it was simply a military plan for seizing strategic ground, and that there was no political scheme to drive the Arabs out of a future Jewish state.
The priority was opening the road to Jerusalem. As the Arab militias didn't coordinate with each other, the Jewish forces were able to pick villages off one by one. The houses were usually blown up. If the residents hadn't already left, they were often expelled. Central to the plan was the capture of Castel, the site of an ancient fortress. At the beginning of April 1948, it changed hands several times in fierce fighting until the Haganah drove the Palestinians out.
They stormed the hill, and the reinforcement came down while they were firing, the commander said, the commander will cover and the soldiers should retreat. So in a way, the commanders covered their retreat. And we lost a lot of people that time. Cost a lot of blood.
In the days before the battle, al-Husseini had visited Syria to get arms and ammunition.
When Abdul Qadir al-Husseini got to Damascus, the Syrian president refused to help him. Husseini stormed out, yelling that they were all traitors and that history would record that they lost Palestine. That was the 5th of April 1948. Abdul Qadir al-Husseini, the strongest war leader the Palestinians produced, came back to Castell to continue the fight.
A few days later, he was killed. On the 9th of April, a group of fighters from the Irgun and the Stern Gang, the two Jewish ultranationalist groups that the British regarded as terrorists, were moving towards a village nearby called Dir Yassin. The Haganah gave them fire support. Recent research suggests the attack killed around 120 Palestinian civilians.
In every house they entered, they killed the people inside. The Jabir family, for example, was killed. 8 of them. They were killed in the morning. They were still sleeping. They shot them and left.
This is from a report written by Itzhak Levy, who was commander of the Haganah Intelligence Service in Jerusalem, dated 12th of April 1948, which is 3 days after it happened. The conquest of the village was carried out with great brutality. Whole families, women, old people, children were killed, and piles of corpses accumulated. Some of the prisoners taken to places of detention, including women and children, were brutally murdered by their guards. Among the prisoners was a young mother and baby. The guards killed the baby in front of its mother, and after she fainted, also murdered her.
Palestinians had been fleeing their homes for safer places since December 1947. But after Dir Yassin, a mass exodus began. Menachem Begin, the Irgun's leader, said the massacre was a lie, propagated by his political rivals and by Jew haters around the world. But Begin said the legend of terror was worth half a dozen battalions because Arabs were seized with panic when they heard the Irgun was coming. Palestinian radio made the atrocity sound even worse than it was, to stiffen Arab resistance. The reports made the civilians even more terrified.
May God curse the reporters who came to us. They were servants of Jewish imperialism. They published stories about their crimes, the massacre, how they violated our women. This helped the Jews, not us. It scared us and made us worry about our honor.
King Abdullah of Transjordan and other Arab leaders came under strong domestic pressure to intervene. Ben Gurion sent Abdullah an apology. Four days after Dir Yassin, there was another massacre. A column of Jewish doctors and nurses was attacked by Palestinians at Mount Scopus in Jerusalem. Their vehicles were set on fire and many were burnt to death. 78 people were killed. Jaffa, just south of Tel Aviv, was in the Arab state in the partition plan. What happened here helps explain why so many Palestinians fled. In April 1948, Arab sniping out of Jaffa was answered by heavy shelling from the Irgun.
The Jews attacked Jaffa, and by bombarding Jaffa, they made the conditions for the Arabs to leave, because the Arabs were afraid that they will be killed. So it wasn't voluntarily, but it was a result of the battle.
But the flight was triggered by more than force.
We let them know in different ways, not in pamphlets, not over the radio, not officially. We let them understand that it's better if they leave because the Jews are terrible. And don't stay here when the Jews come in.
So this was psychological warfare?
In a small scale.
The people flee because of this massacre that happened in Deir Yassin. They were afraid that the same thing will happen here in Jaffa.
Palestinian society was collapsing. Some Israelis claim that the Palestinians were leaving